Okay, so before we moved, we had a dog named Corky who was brown and black and white. And I used to say, people would say, what kind of dog is he? I didn't know about fractions. I didn't really understand math. And I said, he's half terrier and half beagle and half, he was half terrier, half beagle, half collie. Or shepherd, German shepherd. And so he was 1.5 dogs. I thought half was any fraction or any part. So that's what I used to tell people. He was a really good dog, a really nice dog. He was just a mutt, really. He was a mixture. And he got, his shots, which dogs are supposed to get every year. And he got paralyzed, and he had a seizure. And he was paralyzed. He couldn't walk. And my mother was so flipped out because she was in love with Corky. She had to get him to the vet, and my brother held Corky in the car. And I always thought that was so brave of him to hold the dog, to carry the dog in the car. They brought him home, and the vet said, he could learn to walk again. And in a week, if he can't walk yet, he never will learn it. So my mother would put him outside on a rug in the sun or in the shade, but outside, and he'd lay there and he'd be sniffing. Oh my God, it was so wonderful because he loved being outside, and all the neighborhood kids would come over and say Corky, and they'd pet him, and we would say prayers for Corky to walk again. And after like about 3 days, he got up on his elbow, on one elbow, and then he got up on another elbow. So now he was halfway up. He was sort of upright, and then he would try to get his legs underneath him, and all the kids would be around him saying, "Come on, Corky, come on, Corky," and he loved hard-boiled eggs so much that whenever my mother would break a hard-boiled egg, the cracking of the shell, Corky would come running from wherever he was in the house. So my mother would, whenever she was going to make egg salad, she'd start crying, and she would go upstairs to her bedroom and go to the bathroom, into the bathroom, and turn on the water
and crack the egg there.
And crack the egg and turn the shower on and flush the toilet, so that he couldn't hear the egg cracking. That's my tape. Oh, let me see that. I forgot about that. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So that's funny because she was so concerned about his feelings.
Right. She didn't want to get him all excited and he couldn't get up.
Right.
So
Corky.
Yeah.
How
Corky.
old were you?
So what?
How old were you?
I was probably 62. I was probably 10.
Okay, so let's talk grandparents during this whole transition from the first house to the second house. All right. Where are the grandparents?
Well, the first house was in Whippany. My grandparents had a house, a little Cape Cod-y kind of house, also in Whippany, so it was very close. My mother was very close to her parents, and I guess my father loved them. His mother lived in New York City, in Bronxville, on Kraft Avenue, 94 Kraft Avenue. I'd like to go there and see if that building still exists. I'm sure it doesn't. My grandmother was not a very warm person. Grandma Colin, we called her. And his father was dead. He died like 6 months before I was born, and he was not a very warm person either. He was the British grandfather. And so my father just...
He's the link to the portrait painter for Victoria?
Yeah, that was it was his grandfather.
Yeah. That
did those paintings.
Okay.
And my father just loved my grandparents, my mother's parents. My grandpa taught him everything about wiring and electricity and that kind of stuff. And because Grandpa worked for the phone company, Bell Telephone, and so when my parents moved to Morris Plains, it was a little farther away from Grandma and Grandpa, but we went to church every Sunday, and our church was just down Whippany Road from my grandparents, and my parents would take Bruce and me to Grandma and Grandpa's house every Sunday, drop us off, and we would have spaghetti with tomato sauce and a beefsteak, a piece of beefsteak, you know.
Yeah.
In the breezeway, which was the room off the kitchen.
Beefsteak in the breezeway?
Uh-huh.
Okay, listening.
And we would watch baseball games, and I would look at the Sunday paper, and in the comics, in the funnies, there were these paper dolls that I would cut out, and so we were there all the time, every Sunday. And I don't know, I guess my parents went home and they worked on the house, you know.
Yeah.
And then when we came home, they came and got us at 5 o'clock, and we started watching Walt Disney. And my mother didn't cook on Sunday night. What we did for dinner, she would bring a big tray downstairs, put it on the table in the family room where the TV was, and we would have cheese and crackers and cheese and cream cheese crackers. That's what we did every Sunday night. And then we watched Lassie, Walt Disney, I guess, and then Lassie, and then we were only allowed to stay up long enough to hear the theme song to Bonanza. Dun 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 dun. Yep, and we would sit on the steps, and I would cry when I heard that theme song.
Because it meant bedtime?
Yeah, well, no, because I love that song so much, and I love Little Joe, and Adam and Haas, and so as we got older, we were allowed to watch that, but went on at 9, I think. It's kind of late for a Sunday night.
Lawbreakers.
Yeah. So.
Deal breakers.
And then Grandma died.
What year is this?
62. Grandma Colin died. She did not come and live with us, and we started. My parents. That's when he lost his job. So he lost his job and his mother in the same 2 years. He got the job down in Bethesda and moved, and so
yeah, that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, that was a lot, and so then Dad was not with us for 4 months, and we planned this move to Maryland, and I didn't want to go because I loved my English teacher, Mr. Petrillo.
Mr. Petrilli?
Petrillo.
Oh.
And I showed Brooks a picture of him. Brooks just laughed his head off because we had to search through these albums to see this picture of Neil Petrillo. We loved him so much. We used to write his name on everything. All three of us, Susan, Mimi, and I, loved Mr. Petrillo. But we weren't going to have him after 7th grade anyway, so we moved down to Maryland, and I went to Herbert Hoover Junior High School. It was the first year it was open, and everybody had come from different schools. Would you pull that piece of fabric out of there?
So that doesn't. It doesn't.
Thank you.
It's like, oh, you're in a new school. Like, oh, I'm in a new school too. Like
everybody was.
Yeah, right.
We were all in the same boat.
So it's not a big deal.
Then. No. So they were also building a high school right near Herbert Hoover, and it turned out really weird. We went there for 9th grade for our first year of high school, and so I walked to school. I walked to Herbert Hoover because we lived really close. So that's that story. Oh, but we got there the day that the moving van showed up, and we followed in our red station wagon with the sick fish.
Yeah.
And the man behind us, they had terraced the backyard in these hills, kind of like in different levels, and he had chopped down every single tree. My mother was beside herself. My mother was hysterical. She was crying and crying and crying. And my mother, who loved birds, this man had chopped down every tree, and he said they were ugly trees. He said, we'll plant better trees. and
she was not happy about it.
She was not happy. So the first thing they did, we put a fence up so we didn't have to look at his house.
What town is this in?
It's in Potomac.
And what car did you drive to move to Potomac?
The red Chevy station wagon with a white roof. It had those fins in the back.
Yeah.
It looked like two eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get there and they cut down the trees and she's in a feud with him forever?
Oh yeah, she couldn't stand him. She was so angry at him. And we put a fence that had no holes so you couldn't see through it because he had this big imposing brick house. And that's what you saw when you looked out of our back windows. That's all you saw was this big brick house. So then they planted all these trees, and we started getting live Christmas trees. And my poor brother had to dig every hole. And on the hill, there's a hill now. Our little backyard was like in a hole. And they planted a lot of Christmas trees after Christmas was over. And they grew very quickly. And it made my mother more happy. And my father built a patio. He built a cement mixer.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen pictures of the cement mixer.
Yeah, he was in the basement all the time, making this homemade cement mixer. And one day he drove up, he walked upstairs and he said, "Well, it's finished." And my mother went, "Oh my God, my heart. 22 years you've been working on this thing, and now what are we going to do? What are we going to do? It's done." And he brought it up and he took it outside and he put stuff in it and it made cement, and he bought slate and they made a patio with his cement mixer.
In Potomac.
In Potomac, yeah.
In the back, it's like the one with the Asian vibe.
Right. Everything in my mother's house had an Asian vibe.
Yeah, what's up with that?
I don't know. She loved everything Asian. What's Asian?
Oriental.
Oh, what's Oriental?
I don't know. I don't think that's what you're supposed to say.
No, you're not supposed to say that.
Oh, you're not supposed to say that. Okay, so this is the first house that I remember.
That's right.
And I could draw you the floor plan right now.
You could?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, well, let me see it. I want to see what you remember.
Okay. So should I record this?
Yeah.
All right. So you hold this.
Okay.